Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, April 9th, 2013, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be reported in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, April 5th, 2013, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. May we have a roll call?
Rich Matesic, Lucy Biegler. Here. Ann Carey. Here. Mark Friedman.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Roseanne Kirsted.
Here.
Ginny Lights.
Here.
Gretchen Oleg.
Here.
Mitch Slater.
Here.
Brendan, may you lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements.
The special education parents meeting, originally scheduled for April 17th, will now be held on April 24th at Edison Intermediate School's library from 7 to 9 p.m. The presentation on autism will begin at 7:30 by Dr. Roseanne Pagano-Pizzi, a clinical and school psychologist who is the psychology supervisor at Children's Specialized Hospital in Mountainside.
I have two announcements from Westfield High School. The first is related to math. Congratulations to the following Westfield High School students who were awarded honorable mention in Moody's Math Mega Challenge. They include seniors Jenny Amador, Lily Butinas, and Andres Chang, and 11th graders Lucia Liu and Matt Lupino. After advancing to the second level of that competition, where the top 175 papers were accepted for consideration, 43 teams were presented the award of honorable mention. The Westfield High School team, whose paper was 20 pages in length, will split a $1,000 prize amongst themselves. Their paper included researching a problem, coming up with a viable solution, to present with supporting data and a bibliography. And the second announcement, congratulations to Alex Ying, a senior at Westfield High School, who recently participated in the 31st Annual American Invitational Mathematics Examination. He qualified for this prestigious mathematics competition by scoring in the top 5% of the American Mathematics Contest 12. So congratulations to all those students.
Oh, sorry. This is for athletics. Caroline Baldwin, who we congratulated at our last Board of Education meeting for winning the state championship title for swimming, was named the Girls Swimmer of the Year for New Jersey by the Star Ledger. The Westfield High School girls swim team was the team of the year for girls swimming, also by the Star Ledger. Also, Jeff Knight, who coaches both our boys and girls swim teams, was named Coach of the Year for New Jersey for boys swimming by the Star Ledger. Congratulations.
And we have our spring musical events coming up. The Fine Arts Department of the Westfield Public Schools invites the public to attend any of the 31 musical concerts scheduled for this spring. Approximately 2,500 students in grades kindergarten through high school will perform. All concerts are free. The dates and locations for the spring concerts are listed on the district's website. In addition, Edison Intermediate School students will be performing their spring musical, The Wizard of Oz, on Thursday, April 11th at 4 p.m., Friday, April 12th at 7:30 p.m., and Saturday, April 13th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available by contacting the school.
I have two announcements from the high school regarding community service. The the first announcement. On March 26th, Eric Herber, a Westfield High School sophomore and Community Service Club Vice President, delivered a check in the amount of $1,300 for Sandy relief to St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Bayhead, which continues to coordinate daily hurricane relief meals for more than 100 individuals in several shore communities. The funds were raised during a concert held at Westfield High School. The Service Club also delivered meals and toiletries to homeless individuals and other families in need in Newark in March and February through their work with Bridges Outreach. And in a related community service announcement, Westfield High School seniors Andy Fromm and Danny LaCourte are collecting bicycles for kids at the Jersey Shore affected by Hurricane Sandy. To help them in their efforts, Andy just received word that his application for a Disney grant for $1,000 has been approved. The grant to Westfield High School through Youth Service America will be used to supplement their bicycle collection. Used or new bikes can be dropped off at a location in Westfield, 882 Fair Acres Avenue, until April 28th. You can go to the school district's website for more information about this project.
So tonight, we'd like to share a letter with you that was sent to the Westfield High School Science Department from a 2006 Westfield High School graduate. He's currently pursuing a PhD in electrical engineering at UC Berkeley and has held research internships at IBM and Intel, designed and built Formula One style race cars at international competitions, and graduated at the top of his engineering class. I'd love to know what he does in his spare time. It is a long letter, but I'm just going to give you a few excerpts because it's very special. Dear teachers and mentors in the WHS Science Department, I'm writing to tell all of you to thank you all for the quality of education I received as a student while I was there 2002 to 2006. Without a solid foundation of science, I would have had no chance of success while I was at my undergraduate institution, the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT. More importantly, though, without the inspiration, guidance, and demonstrations given by the faculty, I would not have chosen and continued with science as a life profession. Then, after several paragraphs where he recalls appreciation with teachers and talks about specific classwork, he ends with, during those formative years, the teachers in the science department were always trying to stimulate my thinking, even if I did not like it at the time. The faculty ensured I was scientifically literate so that when it came to me to perform in college, I was more than prepared to continue my learning. Once again, I thank everyone that was and is in the program and sincerely hope you continue to not only produce students that can take an AP test, but succeed in their lives as well. I hope my words encourage new and old faculty to continue to try and make their lectures go beyond the confines of a state test and really reach out to and have a lasting impact on their students. And it's signed, respectively, Joseph Correa, who is a graduate student at Berkeley.
Just have a reminder about teacher award nominations. Friday, April 12th is the deadline for nominations for the Phil Hauer Elementary Teacher Award. And Friday, April 19th is a deadline for nominations for the Optimist Award for Intermediate Teachers of the Year. And information on both these awards can be found on the district website.
I'd like to announce some important end-of-year dates. If there are no more unscheduled school closings, the last day of school for students in grades 6 through 12 will be June 20th, 2013. June 19th and 20th are 4-hour sessions. The last day of school for students in grades K through 5 will be June 21st. June 19th, 20th, and 21st are 4-hour sessions. Westfield High School's graduation will be held June 25th, 2013. We announced this date at our Board of Education meeting on November 27th, 2012. Our next Board of Ed meeting. The next Board of Ed meeting will be held Tuesday, April 23rd at 7:30 p.m. here at 302 Elm Street. And now I'd like to make a special announcement to highlight some outstanding students who are all going to be taller than me. I'll stand them. No. It is my pleasure to welcome and congratulate the 4 Westfield High School seniors who have been named finalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. These students have worked hard for this honor, and we congratulate them and those who have supported their efforts throughout the years. Their extraordinary accomplishment is a tribute to their families and to the Westfield High School, which is rooted in a tradition of excellence. According to the National Merit Scholarship Corporation, the nationwide pool of finalists represents less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors. You are among the highest scoring entrants in the nation on the preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test that includes your scores on all 3 testing areas: critical reading, mathematics, and writing. And your continued high performance in your studies solidifies your progression as a finalist. You are academic scholars who have proven yourself on a national level, and we on the Westfield Board of Education applaud your hard work, your achievement, and commitment to your education, and we wish you continued success. As I call out your name, would you please step up to the podium and receive the certificate of appreciation from the Board of Education. And if you could just stay up here, because we'll take a picture of all 4 of you at the end. Andreas Chang. Jeffrey Marino. Eric Michalaukis. Yes. And Eric Oberman.
Yeah.
Need a box.
She needs a soapbox.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Good. Congratulations.
Again, congratulations not only to you, but to your family. It's so nice that so many family members were able to come tonight. We appreciate them coming and all their work throughout the years, and some familiar faces even. We certainly are going on and having more of a meeting, but you can certainly feel free to leave at this point if you'd like to.
Oh, boy.
At this time, I'd like to recognize the public for agenda items only. Seeing no one come to the podium, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Dolan for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So, you learn in life, whether you're a student, like the students who just left, or an adult, it's really good to be flexible. And tonight, our assistant superintendent for curriculum is going to demonstrate that capacity of being flexible. When we first put this topic on as a superintendent report, the school performance reports, we actually thought that the state was going to have released them in May, because that was the original timeline, and so that we would just be reviewing what the public was already looking at. But then, as they released drafts of them, they made some changes this year, and the changes aren't going too well, basically. There had to be a lot of they had to make a lot of edits at the state. And so different versions have been released, and they're having some trouble with data, and they've made changes. So we think that tomorrow is actually when they're going to release them. We don't actually know what most of it's going to look like, but we think they're going to release them tomorrow. In a lot of ways, the good news is, in a lot of ways, they're going to look a lot like the old school report cards. And it's going to be data that the public has already seen at public meetings, because we've already shown the test scores for last year, and we've talked about SAT, and we've had articles about AP and all of that. So a lot of the data is familiar data. The difference is how it's being packaged, really. So Mr. Panera is going to give us a sense of that tonight, and just an overview in anticipation of actually seeing these school performance reports.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Dolan. So that's a good setup, because we won't be looking at the individual data as Dr. Dolan mentioned. We typically look through test scores comparatively in the fall, and we did do that. What I'd like to focus on tonight is a bit of the packaging, as Dr. Dolan mentioned, and maybe touch on the methodology, because there is a shift in the methodology of how the former report card is now going to be presented as a performance report. So right here we see that there are 3 focus areas listed on the performance reports that will be available tomorrow, we expect. The state was required by the federal NCLB waiver to come up with a system to collect data in these areas and then provide it in a format that allows districts to gauge the effectiveness of their schools and the growth in individual student achievement. Prior to this year, this was accomplished by providing data as they related to district factor groups, DFGs. So you won't be hearing DFGs from us anymore. The Westfield and the other districts were categorized in district factor groups, typically based on some formula of socioeconomic profiles. And I believe there was anywhere from maybe 9 or 10 different characteristics that formulated what was formerly, well, what was the district factor group that we are no longer going to be working with. So the next slide shows us that the system will be more, it will be referred to, I would think, as peer group rank. I don't know that we have officially deemed it PGR or anything yet, the way we have DFG. But do know that there's a significant difference, or at least that what the main difference is. And there have been debates over the years whether using district factor groupings for comparative purposes was an exact science. And in fact, anytime we're looking at comparative data and comparing schools or students for that matter, it's not always an exact science. And I think that the larger your sample, perhaps the more a set formula can work. But I think what we'll see a little bit of tonight is that when you're working with smaller groups, like a district factor group, which was typically maybe, I don't know, 15 to 20 school districts, you'll see as we move forward that we're now working with groupings of maybe 30, 31, and that can, I think you're going to see a little bit of what can make that a challenge when you're working with small groups, especially if they've been categorized homogeneously. So the new district factor grouping is based on student populations of free and reduced lunch students, special education, and limited English proficient students. So there's a formula that that we derive, that the state derives the peer group ranking from. It's based on those populations, the percent of them, and so forth. So why don't we take a look at the next slide where we'll see some data that was pulled. This is not the state's format. I created these tables when the data was first introduced to us so that we could look at it. Overall, the reports are initially embargoed, so that they're not for public consumption. And we looked at the data and wanted to look at it a lot of different ways. And so this was one thing that I did to get a handle on what our peer grouping looked like. So here I chose to pull out 14 from our group of 31. So what you see here is 14 of 31 peer schools in the Westfield High School peer group. And they're shown, 14 are shown of the 31. So of the 31, 5 would be above that 98% on the language arts HESPA. So there are 5 schools that scored 99 or 100, because really when you say above 98, there's not that much room. There's 98, 9, and 100. So 5 above 98 or at 99 and 100. And these 14 scored 98% passing in language arts HESPA. And then there were 11 that were below 98. So they're kind of bunched up, as you can see. And one of the reasons that we put it into this table to look at was to make sense of the ranking, because that raised some questions for us. So here's a look at the way the ranking somehow came into the picture when we looked at the embargoed data. So what you'll see here is it's the same chart, but we've added the peer rank percentile in the far column, the right column, and that data was provided from the state. So we looked up each individual school and added them to this table because the percentiles seemed Well, they raised questions for us, and they've raised questions for a lot of districts throughout the state, and these questions have been passed forward to try to make some sense of it. But the first flag for us was that there are 14 schools in our peer group scoring 98%, and yet the peer rank percentile ranges from 39 to 84th percentile. So that was puzzling for us. And so, we did look into that. And in fact, we submitted this table as an example of what happens if you pull out all the members of our group and put them into a table with the same exact score on the HESPA. This is language arts. And the response we got was here on the next slide. This is actually, we were directed to the interpretive guidance. So there's an interpretive guide to working with the performance report. So what I'm doing is quoting the guide that we were referred to. So it says, student outcome data is not always normally distributed. And I think what normally means is, in the sense of math norms. For example, results on the HESPA exam are significantly skewed as statewide proficiency rates top 93% in language arts and 83% in math, making both peer group comparisons and statewide rankings less meaningful for those schools with very high proficiency rates. So I've underlined that last part because it's true. When you bunch things up and group them, it's difficult to rank them via percentile. So that was one of the reasons why we put it into a table to try to make some sense of it. Okay. Here's another issue that was raised for us.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Yes. So can
you wanna
you
go
go
back?
back to that? So, because the scores don't fall into, when they say normally distributed, I'm assuming it's a bell curve they're talking about.
Yes.
So because the peer groups don't fall into the normal curve, because they're all doing really well,
Yes.
they then took the districts that are doing really well and normed that.
That's correct.
That's correct. That's the best
Okay.
answer I've gotten
Okay.
since this came out.
Just
Thank you.
wanted to-
Yes. So what you can imagine, yeah.
All right,
So
I
just
just wanted to see
to-
if I understood
Right.
it correctly.
So, and I think the intent there was a good one. I mean, a group of 30 has been sort of a magic number in previous report cards for what is a statistically significant population or subgroup for that matter. But the tricky thing is that in this particular case, they're homogeneous in their
Right.
grouping. So that kind of skews as it says. So they're acknowledging that, but it doesn't necessarily provide, the data becomes less helpful. I think that's going to be
Then
an
they're
issue.
renorming it, so, but what are they basing that renorming on? They haven't told you.
No.
No. Well, and actually, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
So, I mean, we took a long time trying to look and make sense of this. So all these schools, again, just as Paul said, they all had 98% of their students passing the HESPA language arts, the exact same percentage passing. So then you look at that next column and you puzzle for quite a while. Well, how could the percentile rank range so widely?
Right.
And the key for us was, so every school in New Jersey has its own peer group. The fact that these schools are in our peer group, we may not be in their peer group. And so you get your percentile rank from your school's unique percentile rank. And here's what I don't understand at all. If I'm a parent, and these reports are for parents, that's why they were originally started. So if my child attends Pascack Hills High, I find that my percentile rank is 39%. 98% of the students pass HESPA. You can't get much better than that. But I'm at the 39th percent peer rank. I don't know how that's helpful for a parent. I just don't understand it. But that is the range in our particular group.
Well, isn't there other criteria that they're also basing it on?
No.
Or is it's
No.
solely based?
This chart is
On-
solely based on 98% passing language arts. They have then other percentile ranks based on one data point. But these numbers are based on just the percent passing HESPA language arts. That's all it's based on.
So, I know this probably could go on for hours, right? But because this is the amount of time y'all have probably spent on it. But these schools are not in our peer group, is what you're saying.
They are.
No,
They are in ours.
But we're not in there.
We
we're
may
not
not
in
be in theirs.
I thought it was we were in theirs, but there were other.
We might be in Scotch Plains, but Pascack
Right.
Hills might not have Westfield.
Right. Some of these, yes, we are in some of theirs, but not all of theirs.
How's that possible?
That's how they constructed it. It's a little different.
Paul, if this chart went to, say, 5 decimal points as opposed to just 2, would the numbers make a little bit more sense?
You think like I do, Brendan. I checked a couple of different ways, and that was one of them, which I thought, and then I wondered if there were enough decimal places to actually constitute it. But I also looked at alphabetizing within the county, alphabetizing the counties. So I did look at a lot of different angles. Specifically, we did not get a response to whether or not decimal places played into that. If it did, that that would still only account for, if you're rounding, a small. So,
Yeah, they also determined that every school that tied with you in any criteria was above you,
yes.
which is not generally what you do. But so the 13 other schools who had 98% passing language arts were considered above us in passing language arts.
So if there were, if Westfield got 100% and there were 10 other schools, we'd be at number 11?
Yes. Yes.
So would all the other
Wonderful.
schools.
Yeah, and so would all the others who received 100
But
in
on their
your
own
group.
score.
Yes, but on their, depending on their own little peer group, their own little unique peer group.
Not making it easy to be a new board member.
Don't take it
Or an
personally.
old one. Trust me, this, you should stamp it useless information.
Okay, so
It
Paul,
really
you
tells
started off
nothing.
your remarks by saying that they looked at ESL, you had 3 things they looked at,
Yes.
special does that have something to do with
Well, that
this?
determined, and I guess because like the DFG, I believe that there's there's some profile that suggests certain percentages of those populations dictate that you're similar to other schools.
Right.
And so yeah, and that seemed like a pretty simplistic formula when we eyeballed it. The percentages of those 3 categories. We added and looked, and on that particular group, they were very tightly packed. So it almost looked like anybody that was close to 18% combined of those 3 were in a group. There's a couple of instances in the remarks today, and we're only looking at just a few, where it seems like the math was pretty straightforward, simplistic. So that's one of them.
Yeah, true. And then to go to your point, actually, so, all of the state tests now are based on standards. When most of, well, at least some of us were in school, everything was on a bell curve. Okay? And so you would get your percentile rank. But then they moved I think that was the 90s. In the 90s, they moved to standards-based. So you had a standard to hit in every subject area. And they weren't trying for a bell curve. So they took standards tests, and then they just squished them into a bell curve, which, I don't know, when I was in statistics, you weren't supposed to do that. You use specific statistics for specific reasons. But they took standards-based results and repeatedly in this report squish them into a bell curve. And here's an example of why that doesn't work. It's actually a great example for students learning about why not to do it, because this is what you come up with. That you can have 98% passing a specific test, and then you can be told in your peer rank, you have a 39% peer percentile. That's why you don't do what they did.
This became clear to me with an analogy from Dr. Weissman, and that was if you had, say, 10 world-class runners, the top world-class runners, and then they ran a sprint. When they finished, they could be within tenths or maybe even hundredths of a second apart. If you then took that and ranked them, and then posted that rank as worldwide, because they are, after all, worldwide world-class runners, that gave me a sense through that analogy that when you take, so someone would be in the like the 6th percentile, let's say, or something in that group, but that wouldn't accurately reflect their performance, I guess is what I'm saying, even on a worldwide scale or comparison. So that helped me when Dr. Weissman shared that. So. Okay, so this was Right, this was the explanation. I think I did read it, so we'll move on to the next slide. What I wanted to do is, this is not Westfield information, but it's really important for the next point. And I feel obligated actually to share it, because it looks like the data is going to come out in the fashion that we looked at it. And if it does, with the ranking, it's important that we can all understand that this is the math behind the methodology that came up with the overall academic achievement rank. So this is not Westfield. It is a school I picked randomly out of sympathy. But if you see that they had a 98% proficiency on the language arts with a percentile rank of 39. Their math, they did well. 96%, that's a strong performance. We can debate just how strong it is among the peer group. That resulted in an 81, a rank in the 81, in the 81st percentile. So what became pretty clear pretty quickly is that the state took the percentile rank from language arts, the percentile rank from math, and added them, and then averaged them. And that 60 that you see in the bottom box there for achievement rank is actually the first number on the front page for that school, that their achievement rank among their peer group is 60%, in the 60th percentile, or the magic number 60. And what even, I did not spend too much time in a statistics class, but right away I'm pretty sure that's high school math. And the math teachers, I wanted to double check that they giggled, they snickered. I was at a workshop yesterday, and an old colleague of mine, he laughed. He said, "You can't average averages," and it was like a joke. But this isn't a joke to anybody, because if it does get released this way, and people don't have all the caveats that, look, the report was accompanied by explanation, caveats about all that. You saw one of them. But I don't know that necessarily the media packages things with, by the way, here's, like, you don't see a disclaimer before you see a rank. You see a rank, and we all know how that works. So that can be problematic. And something as dramatic as averaging averages and then dictating the effectiveness of schools and encouraging the public to examine all of that and get involved in their public education system is tricky. So, we were hoping that, because this was supposed to come out quite a few weeks ago, and we figured, okay, the delay must mean that this kind of thing won't appear. But based on the last announcement we received, it looks like we probably will see that. And in fairness, I think it's worth repeating that to get the waiver for NCLB, the state did have to agree to come up with a new system that would rank in a different way. And unfortunately, as is mentioned in their disclaimer in the guidance information, the first year is a rough one. I think the direct quote was something like, in the first year of a data collection, you would expect subsequent years to be more accurate. So, in the first, yeah, so, okay, so here are some questions that, and there were many. We're just going to highlight a couple, 4 or 5. Because the whole thing is problematic in some ways, and we're talking about the ranking and the methodology of math, but there was a lot of interest and concern throughout the state with regard to things as simple as this. In the intermediate performance reports, there is an indicator for algebra grade C or better. In one of our schools, there is an indication of a score on that, and the other one, it's not applicable. What none of us know, we haven't received the answer yet, is how does the state get the report card? Like, literally the grades that students received in algebra in our intermediate classes. I mean, we don't submit, you got a, you received a B in your language arts class or in your computers class. We don't report that. So that was one flag that jumped right out. It's an excellent indicator. Actually, when we get back to the 3 focus areas and the rationale behind them all, they're excellent. I just can't get past that the data is in question as well as the methodology for using it. Yes.
What you said, it is included for one of our intermediate schools, but not the other. Was the data included for the one accurate? Did they have the right numbers?
No.
I don't think so.
We don't report the numbers.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But had we reported
Right.
it, would the
But
number be accurate?
were they accurate? I mean, was it?
No. A matter of fact, one of our intermediate schools, it shows that nobody takes algebra in the school. And, I mean, all parents know that the vast majority of our students take algebra. And the other school shows that a very small percentage, nothing close to the actual number, take algebra. And that was one of the things we did ask questions about, but I believe it's still the same.
And that's one. There were many examples of enrollment questions and issues. How can the state's data collection be inaccurate? In other words, they give us the data, and yet it was the data they gave us in the past was different from the data that they gave us recently. So there's one question. Another one, and that actually, so graphs on some reports show annual trending up, and yet the designations under growth is lagging. Why? I mean, that's a vague one. I don't have a specific graph for that. But we didn't see a lot of connection between the illustrations and what the data was suggesting, or even their interpretive format for it. Some schools met all targets and were lagging dramatically or something. I mean, those things are not matching up. So we do have concern about the data across the board. Here's some more questions that we had. Why do currently posted prior year report card, this is fun, you could do this tomorrow if you wanted. Why do currently posted prior year report card HESPA math scores vary so much with the identical years reported in the about to be released performance reports? Excuse me if that's clunky. So there was a school in our peer group, if you look right now on the NJDOE website for report cards and go to the school, you'll see one score in math for proficiency for 2010. And if you go to the new reports, you'll see that they actually performed 5.8% better 2 years ago in the new report. So somehow they were able to go back in time. I don't mean to be snarky.
Same
forget,
data.
But the data should match. It's the same test, the same analysis, or the same collection. I will say this, in defense of that I have noticed over years, and Dr. Dole and I talked about this, there can be a variation of maybe a half a percentage point or a percentage point even, because sometimes, say, a senior takes the test, a junior fails, but then takes it senior year, and that's counted in that, that cohort, but it never should amount to 5.8, and I've never seen anything but a slight fluctuation. So I did submit that, and I was asked to provide the specific example, and I provided it with screenshots and all. So that was another one. Okay, great. So how do we currently review data in the areas that we can focus on? So I guess the point would be, with our concerns about the data, what can we do with this? Well, again, I think if we try to give it, look at it in the spirit in which it was delivered, which was that, it's a first year new report, and we're doing our best to make it meaningful. And, well, what can we do with it? So we are encouraged to sort through the data within our district, with our peers, colleagues, and make sense of it and put it in our own context. One thing that was helpful, I think, was how the kinds of data that we have worked with in the past somehow can fall under the three categories that were in one of the first slides, and this is the first category. So I'll talk just briefly about how these are great targets, and we can really benefit from staying focused on them once we have the whole accuracy of data thing nailed down. So, for example, each year when it comes to measuring or marking progress with academic achievement, you see that we have the annual review of student performance data, test data, but we also break that down, drill it down further in the district, maybe not necessarily for you all, but skill clusters, subgroups, individual student performance even. We do that year to year, and any available comparative data that we might have. And of course, we still have our own teacher assessments and increasingly more common assessments, so that does provide some data to demonstrate, to look at students' achievement and how they're marking progress. The other indicator, every metric characteristic of what we might consider college and career readiness, I think, is a very good and fair one. They're more than what they include, but the idea that in elementary, absenteeism is a great indicator for college and career readiness. We do regularly encourage parents to keep in mind that we've said that for a long time, that absenteeism is an indicator of engagement in class and eventual, going on to college. So we'll continue to look at that, and the fact that the state called on that as a metric is a good one. I think it's a good metric for that. I would add to that, though, and understandably, you can't collect some data, but internally, we also look for, through informal observation of student social development. I mean, we always have an eye on that. And if there's an intervention, if we can provide some kind of service that helps with those kinds of developments for young kids, because this is the elementary level still, we do all that as well. So moving on, like intermediate, same thing. Absenteeism is always an indicator of future success in college and career. Algebra 1, there's that indicator again, and that is a widely held, considered characteristic for marking potential in the future in college and in high school, for that matter, from the intermediate. So, and we do have great participation in Algebra 1, so that's fine, and it's a good indicator, and we'll continue to look at that and realize that that's the foundation for everything that comes after that. And there's some more up there too, as far as aspects of student development at the intermediate level as well, that may not even be limited to grades. The high school level, typical performance indicators that predict college and career readiness include all of your standards, HESPAs, SATs, PSAT, and we had the great fortune of sharing some PSAT success here today with those students, and some other indicators. Yes.
I have a question about Algebra 1.
Mm-hmm.
With the new Common Core state standards, hasn't the curriculum in the middle schools changed so that it is not specifically Algebra 1 in the intermediate schools?
Well,
I mean, we are offering an advanced,
right.
for students who are potentially advanced in math, to have Algebra 1, but I'm thinking across the state, the new Common Core standards would not support having Algebra 1 in the intermediate school.
In some other districts, I think you're correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I heard that from other superintendents speaking, that they had changed their program, and then all of a sudden this was a
Right.
criteria. Right, it's not a case here, but it is in other
Because the
districts.
state has approved, are saying you need to use the Common Core. Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
So that's college and career readiness. And then the third indicator that we just touched on earlier, but we can take a look at now on the next slide, would be individual student growth. And starting from very young, we have lots of indicators, as we mentioned, with regard to standardized informative assessment. So we continue to do that, but on an individual level, not necessarily looking at the school-wide success and needs, but individual student needs. Year-to-year growth percentiles for the specific students, individual students. All staff are involved in student growth, and it's important to remind ourselves that it's not always about the numbers on tests and so forth. It's growth, and growth means more than academic. And I'm sure the state references that. I know they do, outside of the performance report. But the whole child and all kinds of support. And we continually make the growth of each individual student the most important thing that we focus on. So this is, as I said, just an overview. That was the last piece here, and we can have some questions if you'd like. So that's the overview of not necessarily the specific data, because you've seen that, but more about the methodology questions that have come up in the different format and comparative focus, such as district factor group versus peer ranking, which does prove to be a little bit problematic. Are there any questions?
Paul, under college and career readiness, the third item at high school is post-high school graduation data.
Yes.
Oh, right, post-high school graduation
Is
data.
that meant to be percentages attending a
Well,
post-secondary school?
I included that for, you can now, actually, there's a clearinghouse to collect that data from a statistics standpoint, but we were also informed that they're not comfortable that that data is accurate yet, but it was the first year that they've collected
Oh.
that data. But we also internally can track how students have fared. You know, we know what schools students go to. There's just a lot of exit information we get from seniors when they're heading out to give us some guidance about their growth and how we're doing managing that.
I'm a little confused about these 3 areas of review. Although it's titled how we currently review data, I think what you're actually telling us is the data that these
Yeah.
reports are looking at?
Right. Thank you. That's important clarification. So what I wanted to do was, and what I attempted to do was, so when you see the performance reports, when they're released, you'll see these 3 headlines, or these 3 categories,
Right.
and then you'll see rankings next to them. So what I'm hoping to do, and what we are doing, is breaking down those categories around data that we know is reliable, that we can collect, so that we can follow through on what we think is a good intention as far as what the report is trying to do, which is collect information on those 3 areas and then continually provide support to improve or provide better services all around. So that was the attempt to look at their format, the state, and then show how we can manage in the meantime while we wait for the data to get cleaned up, I guess is what I'm kind of getting at.
Great.
Any other questions?
Yeah?
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, the next is the minutes. I'd like to ask the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on March 19th, 2013, special board meeting held on March 21st, 2013, and the private minutes of March 19th, 2013, and March 21st, 2013.
Second.
Thank you, Mark.
I have to abstain from 21st.
Okay.
Dana, I do as well.
Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep.
Roseanne, I'm sorry, I really wasn't fast enough to ask this question. It was
Oh.
regarding the performance reports,
Mhm.
and it's to Dr. Dolan. Dr. Dolan, if these reports are released tomorrow, what is the district response going to be to help from the school or from your office to set some kind of information out to the public generally and to the parents more specifically about what this is and is not, and how the district is viewing it?
Right. I think Paul and I have met with the principals and supervisors and reviewed the information we think is going to go out. We're not quite sure, so that they have an understanding as well and can share their own observations about it. And then we also spoke about putting information, partially what's in this PowerPoint, but maybe some additional information for parents to access on the website so that they can look and get a better sense as well.
I have to assume we're not the only district asking these kinds of questions, correct?
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, there are districts across the state who have been asking questions. Again, some changes have been made. There may be more that have been made that we won't know until tomorrow. I'm hoping that's the case. That would be fine. But we really won't know until tomorrow.
It seems to me that, I don't know whether this is a way to handle it or overkill. You may consider a frequently asked questions sense of a part of the website where principals are feeding you questions, or you personally may be receiving questions from parents. I can't gauge,
Right.
the level of understanding or confusion or response. But rather than handling if there seems to be a lot of individual concern and interaction that people request, there may be a way to channel that into a productive
Right.
set of answers that are thoughtful so that everybody can participate in at least, assuaging their concern and confusion and uncertainty.
Exactly. All right, maybe that's.
I don't know if that, if it was.
That's possible. Again, maybe some of what was in the PowerPoint and then maybe some frequently asked questions.
Just to kind of, get in front of
Absolutely.
the wave of concern or confusion.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Personnel?
I'd like the board to consider personnel items numbers 1 through 16. Second?
Second.
Ginny?
Thank you.
Dr. Dolan, retirements?
I do. We actually have 4 retirements tonight, and when we add up the years of service to Westfield, we have 104 years of service among the 4.
New record.
From one teacher or from?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice one.
The record should note.
Start working as a statistician.
Yeah.
For the state of New Jersey.
To say that's quite an accomplishment.
The first one is Karen Goller. She's been a member of the English department at Westfield High School for 39 years. She's worked tirelessly to make sure her students are held to high academic standards in writing and literature so that they are well prepared for life after graduation. She's been an avid supporter of young teachers in the department, offering counsel and materials that have been vital to their growth as professionals in the field. And she's always shared ideas and resources with her colleagues. Second one is Kathy Hauser, who began her career at Westfield as a physical education teacher in Edison School, and then for the last 22 years has worked at the high school. Kathy has expertise in fitness, strength and conditioning, and aerobic training, which she shares with her students and staff. She's always willing to volunteer for committees at the high school which promote wellness and a healthier school environment. We also have Karen Stark. Karen Stark has been a member of the high school social studies department for 35 years, teaching AP U.S. History and U.S. History honors. She continually develops new strategies to teach American history in thought-provoking and interesting ways where students are challenged to think critically and make connections across time. She also mentors novice teachers and spends hours every year with her students outside of class helping them set future goals. And we have Beverly Lowenstein. She has been a special education teacher at Wilson School since 2005. As a resource room teacher, Bev creates an environment where her students experience academic, emotional, and social success. She's a strong child advocate, speaking knowledgeably about each of her students' needs every year. We are certainly going to miss all 4 of the educators, but wish them all well in their retirement.
Dana, please.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey? Yes. Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Gallion?
Yes.
Roseanne Kerstead?
Yes.
Ginny Ledger?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Facilities. Rich is running a little late, but I think, Dana, you have some information for us about the roofs.
Yes.
Yes?
We are awarding contracts tonight. We're asking you to award contracts tonight for all 3 of the roof projects. So that is the high school, Roosevelt, and Washington. We are under bid, under our estimate on all 3 of them, which gives us a cushion for next year when we have 7 more coming up. So we will award contracts tomorrow. They'll get their contracts. We have a job meeting set up for next week with all of the 3 contractors, and they'll expect to start as soon as school is closed. And hope we don't have too much rain this summer.
Any questions? Okay, thanks. Long-range planning?
No report.
Policies.
Yes, I would like to ask the board to approve for first reading policy 8462, child abuse and/or neglect. Can I have a second?
I'll
Ginny?
second.
This policy actually came before the committee a while ago. Strauss Esme had combined 2 of their policies, the child abuse policy and the missing children policy, and so we looked at both of our policies to see if we wanted to combine them. Decided not to keep child abuse separate. We updated some information, for instance, the name of DIFUS have changed and some phone numbers needed to be updated. And then the delay has been under the policy, the county superintendent has to approve it. We learned while we were away on spring break that the county superintendent did approve our policy, so now it's before the board for first reading. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kerstead?
Yes.
Ginny Light?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
I'd also like to ask the board to affirm the superintendent's decisions on 13M02, 13M03, 13WA08, 13WI01 for the reasons set forth therein. Second? Ginny? Thank you.
Lucy Biegler.
Yes, can you do it yes on some and no on some? So yes on all except no on 13WA08,
I'm sorry, which one?
13WA08.
Okay. Ann Carey.
Yes.
Mark Friedman.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Roseanne Kerstead.
Yes, except 13WA08.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olick.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes, except for no on 13WA08.
Okay, curriculum, instruction, and programs. Is there anything else, Gretchen?
That's
Sorry,
all. Thank
okay.
you.
Curriculum, instruction, and programs, I'd like to ask the board to approve for second reading the following curricula: social studies, African American history and culture, advanced placement psychology, and science forensics, exercise science, and sports medicine. Can I have a second? Lucy,
Second.
thank you. Any comments or questions? Any idea how enrollment is going in the two new classes, Dr. Dolan?
I know that there's a healthy response, but I don't know the actual numbers.
Okay, good, great.
Lucy Biegler.
Yes.
Ann Carey.
Yes.
Mark Friedman.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Roseanne Kerstead.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olick.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Finance?
I'd like the board to consider resolutions, finance resolutions 1 through 9, which include the roof replacement that Dana was talking about before at the high school, Roosevelt, and Washington, and also which includes us acknowledging acceptance of a gift of $1,000 from an anonymous donor to McKinley Elementary School PTO for purchase of two-way radios for the classrooms. So thank you for whomever made that donation. Second? Ginny? Questions?
Can Dana describe number 7 in a little more detail?
Yes. When we first submitted our No Child Left Behind grant this fall, we were originally told that Edison School, as a focus school, should also be a Title I school. What that did is it diverted $90,000 of the Title I funds to Edison School. Because the program that we are providing there is not costing us $90,000, we would have wound up sending that money back to the state. So after we questioned the state further and they looked into it further on their end, they came back to us and told us that Edison did not have to be a Title I school. So we're amending the grant now to make Tamaulipas and McKinley the only Title I schools, which will allow us to fund more of their programs out of this grant. So basically, it just lets us use more Title I funds, otherwise we'd have to send it back to the state.
Where our Title I needs are.
Yes, right. And the program at Edison is still the same that we've been offering, it's just that we're just shifting around the funding for it.
Any other questions? Dana, please.
Lucy Biegler.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Rich Matesic. Want to vote on this?
Abstain.
Ann Carey.
Yes.
Mark Friedman.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Roseanne Kerstead.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olick.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
I'd like to note the notes for the record.
So
you-
Keep going.
And legislation,
No report.
unfinished business. New business. Technology report?
Just very brief, meeting again on the 26th, met last Friday. We continue to have a discussion about our website and are looking at a variety of different options, and a lot of things are being discussed throughout the district with different groups to get some feedback. And we're also had a discussion about infrastructure and things that we're looking at going forward, and we'll have a full report in a future meeting.
Liaison reports? Ginny?
Yes. I attended the PTO President's meeting on April 4th. Our Central Technology Officer, Brian Alker, gave a discussion of the website movement to the Blackboard platform, and gave the presidents an idea of the fact that we were going to be moving to a new website, and we talked about a survey that would be conducted, who the constituents would be to provide information to help discern the functionality of the website. There were certain questions raised which I thought were good to hear, some of the things that parents had noted of interest that hadn't come up in some of our conversations at the ad hoc technology table. And then Dr. Dolan gave a similar but not quite as detailed a report on school performance report that we had here tonight.
Anyone else have liaison? I'd like to recognize the public for questions and/or comments. Seeing no one come to the podium, I'd like to ask the board to approve the following resolution. Resolve that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, personnel pending or anticipated litigation, and pending or anticipated contract negotiations. And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Second. Thank you, Gretchen. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. You can do that.